yourself throughout the evening. The screen portion is not necessarily crucial, so if you cannot see it, it's not a big deal. I just thought it would be fun to use it since they have this lovely little setup for us. We've got some things on the table, some beer ingredients, and then a beer flavor map. I'll be talking about those later. And then the beer flavor maps actually came from Map Brewing, so I do need to return them, just so you know. And then we also have some lovely Beer Maven shirts. Anyone wants to rep Beer Maven out and about? They're nice long sleeve for this time of year. So Jesse's got those over by the door as well. That's all the logistics that I wrote down. Perfect. Okay, so I will, for those of you that I haven't met, I'll take just a second and introduce myself. So my name is Boy. I currently work at Map Brewing, sort of doing many different things. I have a lot of different tasks there, so I think my most recent technical title was Administrator of Many Things, so I do many things. My side hustle is with Jesse, so we have Montana, so that's kind of my side gig that keeps us busy in every other waking moment. So things that I love beer, obviously. I also love birds. I am a volunteer at the Montana Raptor Conservation Center, so I kind of get a bird fix every now and then. I also love cheese.
No, you're all right. You can sit there.
Later. I'm putting it on my plate. And I'm kind of chronically 10 minutes late to everything, so I'll make sure to get here at 4 today. And in terms of beer, I am a certified beer judge through the Beer Judge Certification Program. And then last year I got my certified Cicerone. So for those of you who came to Beer Maven last year, you probably knew that I took my test, but I'm not sure that I found out that I passed. So I passed that, becoming the 8th person in Montana to have that certification. So,
Yeah. Woo.
Second woman in Montana.
Well,
scientists think that people really wanted beer. So I guess I don't have the answer, but I would lean towards beer, I would say. Then, let's see. So in the like Greco-Roman times, so in the Greek and Roman empires, wine was the drink of choice. And so as those empires started to expand, what they actually did was they started to paint this picture of beer as being like the poor man's beverage to build up their own kind of culture, right, and kind of spread their culture. So beer started to fall out of fashion during that kind of like Greco-Roman expansion when the empires were expanding. And so beer moved into more of a home type process. So beer was made at home by women during that time. And it was a much safer way to drink water, because you're boiling the water. So beer definitely was considered kind of a home drink, and it was sort of like the poor man's drink, or woman's drink. Female brewers are called brewsters. And so I've even read some accounts that like the origins of witches come from women brewing beer in the home, right? If you think about it, like a woman stirring a brewing pot or like a boiling pot, making an intoxicating beverage. Like it kind of makes sense that would be the origin of witches. I can't, again, there's some accounts that say that's true, there's some that say it's not, so I'm not sure, but I can definitely see how that would come about. The next kind of big thing that happens in beer is that hops are used. So hops have a preservation quality, and so hops weren't really commonly used until the 800s. So we don't really see them popping up in beer consistently until then. And then it wasn't until the 1500s that they were used consistently. In 1516, Germany passed a law. This is a great, if anyone like plays trivia in here, this is a great trivia question. There was a law called Reinheitsgebot, which was like nicknamed the German purity law, which required that beer be made only of 3 ingredients, which was water, hops, and malt, or the grain part of that. The reason I'm not saying yeast is because they didn't know at that time that yeast was the thing that was fermenting it. So once yeast was kind of scientifically discovered, yeast got added as that 4th ingredient. But beer could only be made to be considered beer out of those ingredients. And so at that time, like by the 1500s, hops were established as being a really important part of the beer. And then honestly, like we don't see a ton happening in beer or in the beer world until Prohibition. So in 1920, you all know beer, alcohol was outlawed because of the debaucherous nature of our country. But it was repealed in 1933 by FDR. He started to realize the great economic impact that you can have when you tax something like alcohol. I've like read some accounts of him talking about how it would make a happier nation to have beer again. So that although Prohibition kind of killed the industry, so some of the bigger breweries were able to stay alive by doing other things like soda. And I think I was reading, I think it's Coors was able to stay open making ceramics. So breweries that claim to have been, around since prior to Prohibition frequently did something else during that 13-year period. And then now, you all know that craft beer is booming. Breweries are popping up all over. Tiny towns have their own little breweries, and it's really incredible to see. But it wasn't until very recently that we surpassed pre-Prohibition number of breweries. So pre-Prohibition, again, if you think about the capacity of beer to travel, driving in cars was really hard. It was hard to ship that. So breweries were really locally focused. Then when beer came back, you get these big macro breweries, and now we're starting to kind of go backwards and see that local craft beer revolution taking over. So recently, I think in 2018, we surpassed 6,000 breweries in the United States. 7,000 now. All right, it's climbing. And it's pretty cool to see fall, they kind of claim in that way that beer was the cause for people to settle down and start farming. So I like to think that because women were the driving force behind beer, that we are responsible for the greatest invention of all time. Just trying to really empower us. All right, so I'm going to jump into what beer is made of. And I know I kind of like talked about that with the Reinheitsgebot. There will be a spelling quiz later. So beer is made of 4 ingredients, like I mentioned: water, malt. Malt is frequently barley, but can be also be wheat. There's malted wheat and malted oats. Hops, and then yeast. And again, yeast not being technically added until a little bit later, after scientists really started to understand what yeast was and that fermentation of it. So water makes up most of beer. Beer is about 90% water. So as you can imagine, something that is a very large portion of the of beer is going to have a big effect on what it tastes like. Doesn't surprise you probably that water is affected by the world around it. So that sort of terroir that you hear about in wine. And again, I don't know much about wine, but you know the plants soaking up the water, kind of the minerals in the soil can change the way the grapes are tasting. So if you think about that, like the water as it's seeping through the earth and picking up some of those minerals, the water is going to be shaped by the area that it's in. So it's pretty cool if you think about how local styles sort of developed around what their water chemistry was. This is where I have to look at my notes, because I've majored in art history, so sometimes the science stuff is a little, it takes me longer to get. So the Pilsen area, where the Pilsner style developed, that really light, crisp lager in Germany, they have really soft water. And so that soft water, right, without a lot of minerals in it, was a perfect match for that beer that had really light flavors, because then you didn't get a ton of that mineral flavor coming through. If you can imagine, like, really heavy flavors in water would have a hard time matching with something really light, like a Pilsner. Whereas, like in England and in Ireland, they have really hard water. So styles like IPAs developed in England, Irish stouts, if you think about that, those are really intense flavors compared to like a light, crisp lager. And that's because their water had so much minerals in it, you kind of had to have something that worked with that, and then it kind of melded with those flavors. So that's why we see stronger beers coming out of areas with maybe more flavors or more minerals in their water. Now these days, breweries frequently treat their water. I can't speak for the way all breweries do it, but at MAC we have 4 different ways that we can filter our water to kind of get the water chemistry that we want. We even have an RO system, so if we want to, we can like basically strip it and then put what kind of things we want to recreate that water from those areas. So if we wanted to brew an English style IPA, we could kind of research the water chemistry and then create that water to mimic that. So a lot of breweries, when they're creating German beers or English beers or Irish beers, they'll try and mimic the water chemistry from those areas to like help create a more authentic version of that style. Do they have any questions about water or about anything, I guess? I've sort of gone in. Okay. So malt is our next ingredient. So malt most frequently references barley. And the malting process, just really simply, involves getting the kernel to sprout. So you take the barley kernel and then a malt stir. So those are the people that create the malt for brewers. What they'll do is they'll get it just to sprout a little bit, because that process of it getting ready to germinate activates enzymes that are really important in the brewing process. Then what they do is they dry it. So they halt it before it actually sprouts. So you're kind of like getting the kernel to get ready, and then you're stopping it by drying it out. So cup, don't taste that yet. We'll get to that. But definitely start with the one, the not labeled A, but the lighter one, and take a couple kernels. And you might recognize some flavors that you get in beer. You might recognize a kind of toasty flavor or like a bready flavor that as you're eating it, you're like, oh yeah, I definitely can see how that flavor pops up in beer. As we taste beers too, feel free to kind of, if you're like, oh yeah, like take another bite of the malt. Again, I'm like super into this eating malt. Hillary told me she likes to eat it too. So. And then the really dark one, the dark one is called chocolate malt. So that would be present maybe in like a porter or a stout recipe. You would be surprised at the small amount of dark malt that it takes to make a dark beer. So you might only have, what's it like percentage?
You can have as much as like 1,200 pounds of malt, and 20 pounds of that can be like in a dark beer, like a Scotch ale or a porter. It's a very small amount for most beers.
Yeah. So you know you can have 10% of all the malt that you're putting into a beer be the dark malt to create something as dark as a porter. You're definitely welcome to taste the chocolate one. You're going to get a lot of bitterness. I mean, imagine eating like unsweetened chocolate. You know, it's got that really kind of dry, bitter flavor. So sometimes that bitterness that you're getting from that might make itself known in darker beers as well. Now, the reason I wanted you to hold off on the A is because with the growing interest in sour beers, I wanted to grab this because I think it's really fun. So the A is something called acidulated malt. So what maltsters will do with that is they actually, after they've dried it and kilned it, they'll ferment it. So there's a natural lactic acid on the barley kernels, and they'll let it ferment to get a little tart or a little sour, and then they'll re-dry it out. So what you do, or what happens when you add that into your beer, is you're going to bring the pH down. Now the reason that this is interesting is because going back to that law, right, the Reinheitsgebot, Germany wouldn't allow you to add anything to adjust the pH. You couldn't add just like a little lactic acid to adjust the pH. And for beer to taste good, you need it to be in a certain range. And so by adding some of this malt, then that would help balance the pH. Now with sour beers, so I'm sure we have some sour beer fans in here, but sour beers like a Berliner Weiss, that's a German style, that they would potentially use a lot more of that malt to create a sour beer. So you're creating a sour beer out of this tart malt. So when you taste, you're welcome to taste it now that I've prepared you. It's gonna taste tart, and it's super interesting. I love sour gummy worms. That's like fun fact. That's one of my favorite candies. So I loved it, but I know Hillary was like, oh, no, so tart. But it definitely has that sour freshness.
Not too bad.
You might not taste it like right away, but it'll develop and you'll get it.
Yeah. I hate sour stuff.
So I thought that malt was pretty interesting in the way it was used historically, and then the way people can use it now. There's lots of different ways to make sour beer, and we're not going to get into that tonight, but using a higher amount of this malt in your beer would be one way that you could add that sourness to your beer.
So do they dry the barley first and then roast it?
Yes. Yep, correct. So they'll dry out in the malting process, they'll dry it out, and then they'll put it through a kiln that's very similar to, and I think that even some small maltsters will use coffee roasters to kiln it or to darken it and create those different roasts. Okay, so malt gives beer a lot of flavor and all of its color. Okay, perhaps I'm going to pass it over to Hillary.
Do I just have to, like, Lloyd, do I just have space or something in it?
I'm okay.
Hi guys. So yeah, like Lloyd said, she listed a few of my achievements in the brewing world. One of them is not public speaking, so bear with me. I might look at my notes a little hops weren't commonly used until the Middle Ages, but were standard by the 1500s. And hops are added, this is what I so hops are added during the boiling process. And different stages of the boiling process are going to give you, they're going to extract different qualities from hops. If you throw hops into the beginning of the boiling process, that's where your bitterness comes from. And if you take one of those little hop pellets in the cup there, and you can kind of like squish it in your fingers, you're going to get like an oily texture to it. Or if you've ever felt, if you've ever seen like a whole cone hop flour, it's the same thing. If you rub it between your hands, you're getting that lupulin powder on your hands.
I would not eat this.
Yeah, do not eat this. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so that sticky texture, those are the oils, and in a process called isomerization, as you add it to the boiling process, the longer you isomerize those hops, then the more bitterness you're going to extract from it. So that's where the bitterness comes from. Of course, hops do a lot more than just that. I'll look at my notes. And so, as you further down the line in the boiling process, because your boiling process is going to take anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, if you throw the hops in during the mid part of that, you're going to get a lot of flavor compounds from those hops. And the further you get down, you're getting more aroma qualities. And so that's why at the very end of your boil, you might throw in more hops, and that's going to really get a lot more of the aroma. And then, of course, you can dry hop your beer later down the line at the end of the fermentation process. And that's where you get all those smells. And the smells from beer actually have a lot more to do with the taste of beer as well. So you get a lot of that from that. Yes.
Okay, and then our final ingredient that's going into the beer is yeast. And I like to joke that the yeast is actually the most important employee at the brewery. Because without yeast, we wouldn't have anything to sell or have jobs or anything great to drink. So brewers make the wort. That's the name for basically the sugar water that the brewer creates. And then the yeast is in charge of fermenting all those sugars in beer. Very simply, yeast metabolizes the sugars and creates ethanol, so the alcohol portion, and CO2. Yeast is a fungus, which is really interesting. And there's two main kinds of yeasts in beer. There's ales and lagers. So lager yeast is a yeast that ferments at colder temperatures. And basically, when the yeast is fermenting at colder temperatures, it's slower to do its job, right? It's sort of like slowly eating all those sugars. And what you get out of that is a really clean beer. So if you like lagers, you like the really clean, crisp beer because it's taking the time as the yeast is doing its job, it's kind of creating these other flavors. But when it's fermenting slow like that, it has time to go back and eat up all those other flavors. So that's why lagers are very crisp, clean beers. You don't get a ton of flavor out of the yeast. When you're tasting the lager, you're really just getting flavors from the malt and from the hops. Versus an ale, which is a warmer fermenting type of yeast. So ales are going to be, a lot of the things that you're used to, like porters, stouts, IPAs, pale ales, amber ales, all of those types of things. And in those beers, you can potentially get a lot of flavors from the yeast. When you're fermenting at higher temperatures, as the yeast is doing its job, it's kind of creating the second layer of flavors. So you can get fruity flavors or spicy flavors from ale
just basically cracking open the grain and exposing those starchy qualities inside. And what you do is you grind it up there, and then through a bunch of conveyors, and I'm speaking as a commercial brewer, so not like a home brewing, this might be much different. But you, through a bunch of conveyors, it will send it to what's called a mash tun, which is just this big vessel. And at the same time, you're going to add hot water, or commonly referred to in the brewing industry as hot liquor, or liquor is just any brewing water that you're using. And you send that to the mash tun, and as it rests, you're going to convert, it's called the conversion, so you're converting the starches in that malt into sugar. And so through all the, like Loy said, when you're halting those enzymes during the malting process, and now that they're exposed and the water is added, you're essentially restarting it. And so there's a bunch of enzymatic activity going on, and all of that is taking the starch and converting it into sugar. Like I said, you rest that for 60 to 90 minutes, generally 60 minutes. And then begins the process of watering. And so there's a couple stages of watering. Two of them are the one you start with is called the pour-off, or recirculation. So in this mash tun, there is a false bottom. So if you think of like a colander, there's like whole, like perforated slants in the bottom of this tank. And so the water you're going to have a pool of wort at the bottom where your grain bed is resting on top of that. So now you can take the wort and recirculate it over the top. And what that's going to do is compact that grain bed and kind of clear up the wort a little bit more. And then after that, you're going to take that wort and send it over to a boil kettle. And as that's going on, you're also doing a process called sparging. So you're rinsing the grain with more hot water. And so as it's running off the concentrated wort to the boil kettle, you're also rinsing the grain and sending the rest of that over with it. And then so when you are in the boil kettle, this is where you add your hops. You bring up that temperature to a boil. You add hops over different stages, like I said earlier, to get those different qualities. So the bitterness or the flavor or the aroma, depending on what hops you're itself can be done in 5 to 6 hours. It's not that long. The fermentation process, it depends on the style of beer. Like, I'm not familiar too much with lagers. We never made any at Flathead when I worked there, but that's much longer. That colder temperatures and the different yeast takes a couple more weeks. But you can have a beer from mill to being ready to package can be done in 2 weeks.
At DraftWorks, it spends 2 weeks in the ales, we're gonna spend 2 weeks in the fermentation vessel before filtration. So usually from the day we're brewing it, it's available 15 days later, and it's about 4 to 6 weeks on the lagers. So about triple-ish. Sometimes longer, just kind of depends on the desired flavors and style and yeast and how much it's using.
It's kind of interesting when you start learning about brewing that you've got to kind of pick up a whole new vocabulary. But one of the ones that I haven't learned yet, why is it called a bright tank?
A bright tank?
Yeah, the carbonation tank.
Boy, do you know? Because I don't.
I mean, my guess would be that, you're like, so bright tanks can be used to like let everything else settle out. I guess I've always thought that it was like you're brightening up the beer, right? You're kind of letting all the final pieces of it settle, but that could be wrong. That's just what I envisioned.
I quickly check that on Google sheet.
Yeah, what if we all have a tool?
Never asked, yeah.
There's so many things that I'm like, it is what it is.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and we're going to start passing out your first beer. Katie's going to go through a little bit about, so what we're going to do is this first beer that we're going to try today, we're actually going to try first, and we're going to come back to it at the end. We have enough that we'll pour other samples, so if you want to save it, you can, and we'll also pour another round of it at the end.
I didn't find anything quite yet. The other thing with the bright tank is BRITE, which is a little bit, I mean, I don't know what the difference is. I'll check again afterwards, but, so I don't know.
Do you want to push through this, or do you want to just bring it all back up? Okay.
So, like Boy said, my name is Katie.
Head
I'm
over
from
as soon as
Missouri,
thank you.
Missoula. I've been in the industry in one shape, form, in about 11 years. Actually bartended here in Bozeman during my stint in college. Didn't learn a whole heck of a lot about beer at the time.
Just
like
drink
Boy
it.
said, I drink a lot of it, among other things. The thing about that part, so that was in 2005, 6, 7. There was only about 1,500 breweries in the nation at that point in time, so craft beer was still had its heyday. 8 years ago last week, I actually started on at a beer distributor, sold beer for them. So I was in charge of a route in certain accounts that I had to go see every single week. I was in charge of selling them new beers, seeing what was going on, ordering, all that stuff. And 2 years ago, I got the job at DraftWorks, and I'm the sales manager. So I've worked all 3 tiers, from supplier, distributor, and the actual retail accounts. Much like Hillary said, I'm not a public speaker, but I enjoy talking about beer, one of my big passions. Very much unlike Lloyd, I've been studying for the Cicerone in one shape for like 8 years basically, and my memory is horrible, and I can get myself to the point of taking a test.
Yours is very different.
One thing,
I should give you
to let
the
you know,
wrong
this
one.
book, Tasting Beer by Randy Mosher.
I got
know it's
sour.
right now, it's
Goza.
an older version.
Oh,
If
you want
you're
some?
ever looking for a beer book, this is an unbelievable top to bottom, quick intro, has a bunch about everything you could possibly want to know about beer. Couldn't chance. One thing we're gonna notice, especially with this beer, like I said, we'll revisit it. There's a lot of beers that you might need to take a couple sips of to really make a decision based on what you've already been drinking. If you've been drinking something that's super hoppy, and then you come to something like this, your taste buds, I would say that first is complete palate cleanser, the second is kind of preparing the palate, and the third is when you can, the sip is really when you can make a judgment. So I like to tell people, try not to judge beer in your first sip. Once you get into it, you really know what's off flavors, and some of those are definitely, okay, yeah, this is a bad beer, you'll know right away. But certain styles are meant to have some of those off flavors. We'll get into a little bit more about that when we start talking about the specific beers. But so the first thing you do when you are looking at a beer or when you are served a beer is you're looking at the appearance. You're looking at the color. You're looking at the head retention. Sometimes, especially on the can, depending on the pour, we joke, we call it tickling the beer sometimes, we just like spin it. That'll kind of help you if it does build up a little bit. That'll help you see the head retention. Much to most people's dismay, there is supposed to be about ½ inch to 3/4 inch of head on every beer. That helps retain the aromas, and your sense of smell is going to be a huge part of what you're tasting. And then the clarity. You'll notice with this one, it's supposed to be cloudy with the Goza.
So some people have beers that are not hazy at all, right? So with a lot of styles of beer that are hazy, the first pour out of the can is going to just not have, in transportation, that's kind of settled at the bottom. They should taste exactly the same, they just aren't looking the same.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be another thing too with this hazy IPA craze. There's a lot of times when you'll get a very clear beer, and that usually just means that the account needs to kind of rock the keg a little bit and suspend all of the proteins and the yeast and the stuff in the beer. It's still gonna taste the same for the most part. I mean, there's definitely some parts of it that you're not gonna get quite as much as you'd like. It's also gonna cause a nightmare at the end of the keg when it's all settled down and it's just blocking everything, where you get, I mean, like a solid beer at the very end. So that's the appearance. Like I said, the aroma, so over 80% of your taste comes from smell. So that's gonna be another thing, is to take a big sip, big sniff. But one thing that I was taught that was a good way to really get it, you kind of make a pass at something with a bunch of small sniffs. That'll help more than one big inhale of the beer. It'll help you, kind of going past it, can pick up on some other aromas that you might not have in one big one, because you're going to get everything at once instead of kind of letting it settle in. So again, the agitation, like I said, like we joke, tickling the beer, the head retention.
beer. And yes, occasionally I do just crack a beer and slug it down for fun without too much thinking. But if I am sitting down and trying to like really pick apart a beer and try and get all the flavors out of it, I will try and get all my smells out first, because as soon as I taste it, I have trouble picking up the same depth.
And there's some beers that are they're really going to test your smell versus your taste. And it's not going to taste like it smells. We didn't bring that one, but our American Pale Ale, for instance, when you smell it, it's going to smell like a very hoppy IPA, because we do use a lot of the hops. But like they said, the difference between the bittering hops and the aroma hops, it's meant to have the aromatics, but it's not going to be as bitter on the finish and throughout the tasting. So it is a nice way to get that ahead of time before you've made up your decision with taste. So the flavor, like we talked about, the malts. Are there chocolate malts? Or is it light malts? Is it the acidulated malts? Is there going to be the oats or the what other stuff is in the beer other than just the hops, the yeast? Some of them are going to have adjuncts, and then even with hops, is it more of like an earthy hops, a lot of the English hops, or is it a West Coast hop? You know, a lot of the big ones that we see around here that come from local areas that are going to be have a bunch of the citrus fruit characteristics. You get that a lot. Same thing between the aroma and the flavor. And remember to smell and taste. And then what do the flavors remind you of? That's one of the biggest problems I have when I'm trying. I'm like, God, it tastes like something, and I can't figure out what. There's some great flavor wheels and stuff like that where you're like, okay, this is bitter. What part bitter? This is fruity. What part of fruit? And that's just something that
That's what things on the table is
yeah.
helpful.
Absolutely. Is where is this coming from? What am I? And again, that's going to be something, if you don't like citrus fruit, you're not going to like a lot of the ones that have citrus fruit, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to like something that has hops that has the citrus fruit characteristics, because that's, while that might have the aroma, the flavor is going to be a lot different than a true citrus fruit. And then the mouthfeel, so the viscosity, is it a thick beer? Something like Guinness is actually, everyone's like, oh, that's too heavy, and it's actually one of the lightest beers, both in alcohol and just taste in general. And that's because that is nitrogenized, has nitrogen instead of the carbonation. So nitrogen instead of CO2. And those are a bunch of really small bubbles instead of the bigger bubbles. So it's actually going to be less filling, but it's going to be a creamier taste. So any of the nitro beers, some of them, like the effervescence, some of them are going to be even higher carbonation. So it's going to be almost like champagne type carbonation. It's going to really be bright and bubbly on your tongue.
Fun fact about Guinness, if you make a black and tan, if you guys know what that is, where you have the layers of the beer, a Guinness will float on top of a Miller Lite. So like she said, with people thinking that the Guinness is a lot heavier because it's darker and all those things, it'll actually float on top of Miller Lite. So.
Fun fact.
Bad idea to make sense.
Sharp for a pale ale. Yeah, exactly. And then how's the finish? Unlike wine, when you're tasting beer, you don't want to spit it out. That finish and how it finishes in your mouth. What does that lingering flavor have? That's a huge part of tasting beer, is that finish and getting the full front to back. And there's some that you'll notice that it leaves just the lingering taste in your mouth just doesn't sit right. And sometimes that's the hops, sometimes it might be adjuncts, but that is a huge part of finishing with the tasting of beer.
beer, you have the cheat sheet in front of you, but what we're gonna do is, we're gonna take like 3 or 4 minutes at your tables, and I want you with your table to kind of just chat about everything that you're getting out of it. Anything you noticed. I also wanna just be clear, like, there are no wrong answers in this room. Like, if you smell this and you're like, that smells like Campbell's tomato soup, that's valid. Like, that's totally valid. So don't feel like, oh, I'm gonna
this one.
Probably not in this one.
I just don't want you to feel like, oh, I can't say anything because I'm not going to say the right thing, because it is right. Like, if you're smelling that or if you're tasting it, that's totally true for you. So,
Why in a lot of tastings as well, you're not allowed to talk to the people next to you because until after you're finished, because it's crazy how much someone else's opinion, or even just like learning later what, like, we did a test at MAP the other day where we were testing for an off flavor called diacetyl, and I didn't get it at all. And then as soon as Lloyd said that that's what we were looking for, I was like, I get it now. And so it's crazy how your mind can play tricks on you if you're not looking for something and then you are looking for something. So if your neighbor suggests, oh, this tastes like, whatever, then your mind might play tricks on you. So it's always kind of best to go into it with your own opinions first and then share with the group. That's what
I feel like maybe you can't put your finger on it. That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. So this is our blood orange goza. That is how it is pronounced. And one of the things, especially in a room a little bit darker, for checking the color, is if you put it up against a white piece of paper, that's over here, you can see a lot of the colors that you might not see. And I use the back of the papers in the front, just because you're going to get the color for the print. So that'll help
That work?
check the color on this one.
Had better without. Oh yeah.
So let's take a few minutes at your tables, sniff, sip, and
This is one of the main ones I was talking about too, that it might take a couple sips to, don't judge by the first sip. I'm not saying all beers are for everyone, but it's a good one to.
I agree with that. My first sip, I was like,
and then we'll come back together in a few minutes and kind of hear what everybody was tasting and smelling out of this,
I'm
guys.
gonna grab some food. Me too.
Tastes better now than it did at lunch.
I'm gonna grab you some water. And if you didn't know, there's cheese behind the screen. That's what I want. Yeah. I'm gonna grab a little. Drink this before I eat any. I can smell the cheese. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely drink this before I eat any of this. It smells so cheesy. Just gonna change it.
But what besides fruit? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. What
Yeah.
other thing do I taste besides just the fruit? Because I definitely taste that.
Yeah, but if you taste gozas, gozas are salty and sour. Now there isn't much salt in this one, but Bozeman makes a black currant goza that's really salty and sour.
I can see where you get that.
Yeah, that'd be like peaches or your plums or nectarines, your cherries.
This is coriander.
Yeah,
There's a little spice. I think that's a little spice.
a little spice. It's not bad. I hate beers that are over spiced, and man, they really turn me off. But this one,
I don't get a lot of bubble on my palate.
All right, I'm gonna bring it back together so we can chat about what sorts of things you were experiencing in our goza.
So what were some of the flavors that everyone tasted in it? What were some of the flavors you picked up?
Oh yeah, did anybody take a sip and then also eat a little piece of the acidulated malt? Did you get some of that? Remember that acidulated malt is fermented with the lactic acid or the lactobacillus that's in the kernel. So this beer has lactic acid in it.
Yep, we use lactobacillus. So there's a bunch of different kinds of sour beers. For instance, like Lloyd was saying, the beer judge certification program, the 2008 guidelines had one sour, and I think the 2015 had like 8 different sour styles that have been broken out. So some of them use wild yeasts. Some of them are aged a lot longer. The gozas specifically can be called kettle sour, quick sour, blended sour. I don't know. Anyways, but so we actually do this one separately, where we brew the base, which has the acidulated malts, and it has the lactobacillus in there. And with that one, we use that specifically because lactobacillus is a lot easier to control in a brewing environment than the wild yeasts. Wild yeasts, if you don't have a super controlled environment, can easily infect your entire brewery
yep.
and
you
infect
have
all the beers and get into everything you don't want and ruin an entire brewery.
And you end up dumping it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but this one is a lot easier to control. The lactobacillus is a lot easier to control than the other ones. So like I said, it does have the acidulated malts, lactobacillus. I don't know how many of you guys picked up on the sea salt. So we do put a little bit of sea salt and coriander in the gozas, which is the difference between our straight up sours. If you see in
Made me want more.
Yeah, teams wanting more.
Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of that is that high CO2 in there that makes it very bright. When you're trying to prepare your food, they say the cut, which will help refresh your palate with every bite, because it'll clean off your taste buds for the most part. And that is a big part of this one, and that effervescence in it. But with the sea salt, the brightness, one of my favorite pairings of this is sushi, because it's not going to overpower the fish.
Yeah.
With the salt and the
Here's mine.
sweetness will really go with a lot of sushi rolls. And if you're like me and can't do spicy, it'll kind of help tone that down.
Anybody else have any final thoughts on the blood orange gyoza?
Are there any like similarities between like I just don't know between like those and Hefeweizens? I feel like it smells
Yep.
similar.
These are
Does it smell?
basically kind of a much more recent cousin of the old German Hefeweizens. There is wheat in there, which is ground up in our base malts, just to add a little bit more flavor, a little bit more backbone to this one, since it does have such a light malt base. And then the other thing too is with that blood orange, we only use 100% real fruit in all of ours. So you'll actually, depending on the season for the blood orange, it'll turn almost pink. Because it's, if you in the store, the blood orange is super dark and bright in color. So.
Is this a pricey beer for you to brew?
And actually that's the other reason with the kettle sours is they go a lot quicker. We brew this in the same time as we do all of our other ales, just over about 15 days. It's a lot quicker. A lot of those wild yeasts and some of the true old school sours, they can take 6 months, 9 months before they're ready. The lactobacillus, again, same thing with the acidulated malts. It helps drop the pH quicker to get where we want it to be without having to take a super long amount of time to get to where we need to be.
How are the blood oranges processed before you put it in the sugar?
We do use organ fruits, and they send it in frozen purees. So, and that's just because
so you can taste it.
I don't feel like it's definitely not fruity.
No. It's more bitter.
It's not as strong.
And we do have. Yeah, but I just don't know if it went through an extra filtering. I mean, yeah, we have like a machine that's going around, so it's always like a big. Well, you know what? We do have No, we do have
I want to be in charge of who names all of them. I want to be in charge of the naming.
Naming of beers? You're actually really good at that.
I hear it's really, really hard because
Yeah.
there's so many names out there already. Right.
It's kind of grassy or earthy.
Yeah, I was gonna say earthy.
we do actually put lactose. Oh, yeah.
Marsh. Marsh.
Those acids that are in tops, but I don't know. Like often like so much sour.
Fresh hay.
It's essentially
Fresh hay.
that's it.
Maybe even a like a
Like this barn yard.
So
almost a berry to me too.
the sugars, like
Like a raspberry.
so the fermentable
There's coconut cranberry.
I want a copy of this.
I don't.
But go out to map.
Did they give them away?
I don't know. That or you can buy them.
Okay, so if you it kind of gives you a whole bunch of different you don't like
So which breweries have you been to while you've been here?
In Bozeman, I've been to about half of them. I've been to Mount, 406, Bozeman, Mountains Walking, Bridger Brewing. I haven't done most of them. I haven't been to Outlaw, but I've been to a tap takeover. Those are the ones that, you know.
Where do you live?
I live in Butte.
I was got Muddy Creek.
Money Creek's nice. Butte Brewing is nice. Quarry, I have problems with.
Quarry. Oh yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't either. Not only that, their place is not ADA compliant. I mean, when I walked in there and looked down, and yeah, they have a stair and a handrail on the left. They had none on the right. So I didn't go down there.
What was everyone's thoughts of this? Pick up anything?
Bitter.
Bitter.
yeah, especially for like
Yeah.
Was anybody able to get that kind of sweetness from the lactose?
No.
The other thing that the people I was chatting with that we noticed is from the lactose, it also has like a bigger body. That lactose in there gives it a little bit more like creamy, richer mouthfeel than you're expecting with kind of a light, like
Yeah. A little bit more on the backbone. As you can tell, it's only 18 IBUs on the international bittering units. Very low.
Somebody just asked what's IBU.
So it's international
They're
bittering.
gonna ask me that too, and I gave them the longest roundabout answer ever, but IBU stands for International Bitterness Unit, and ABV is the alcohol by volume.
And so, you know, like we were talking about with the judging, there's technical guides of what it's supposed to be. It's the perceived bitterness. You'll see a lot of the IPAs are usually 50 and above. The pale ales are usually between 30 and 50, but nowadays it's all sorts of skewed, depending on the styles of.
Well, and it depends too on the brewers, even that's it.
Correct.
Everybody's doing it different.
Correct.
How is it generally done?
We usually are doing kind of a target where, depending on how long we're using our bittering hops in oil versus how much of it is coming later. I was gonna say,
There are calculations you can do, and I do not remember them off the top of my head. I haven't been in school for 3 years, but there are calculations that you can do by alpha acids and beta acids in hops, and the time at which they're thrown in and the quantity that will give you the answer as to what ballpark your IBUs are.
brewers these days have software that just says it has all the hops already in it, that the machine knows where those alpha acids and beta acid levels are. So you just say 10 pounds of citra hops at 60 minutes, and you just like put them into the computer, and then it spits out a number for you. So,
and if you're just looking like down on our hop profile, you'll see this one has 2. And then you look at our IPA, and I think there's 7 listed there. So, and you are picking your hops based on how much is all acid. So there's a lot of different ways. I don't know exactly how we do it. I just love it.
I love
were there any other standout flavors or aromas or anything you noticed about the Caribbean?
Toasted marshmallow.
Toasted marshmallow. I like that. Some of that's probably coming from the sweetness, you know. Okay. All right. So the next beer we're going to dive into, we're going outside of Draftworks for a bit, but don't worry, we'll be back. Is from Lewis and Clark in Helena. This is their Miners Gold Hefeweizen, so we're going to dive into the Hefeweizen category. This beer won a gold.
Yep.
It just won a gold at the Great American Beer Festival, which is a huge accomplishment. So this is just a really great beer for this style.
Yeah, I was saying they wanted to keep silver in 2017, and they want a couple different rules.
Yeah, so they definitely have had a lot of success with this beer. So I thought that this one was a really good one to exemplify the Hefeweizen style. We've got some tasting notes there, and I will.
So the biggest thing between like this American wheat beer, a lot of like the German wheats will have what are they, like the almost banana clove esters, just
Yep.
because they're using the Belgian yeast. This one is definitely American yeast, so it's gonna be a lot more calm, not quite as.
banana and yeast. I know. They were talking about the female being the gateway one. It's Hefeweizen.
Really?
When we started, I mean, you just start. Did you get to go to the Great American?
I've never been.
She went this year.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's
pretty overwhelming. The rare beer was the best.
Is that like a specific area?
Yeah, so they had the rare beer at a different venue. Civic Center and the beer fest was at.
Did you have to buy a different ticket to go to that?
Julie did a
Smell.
pairing one. It was
hated the pictures
You know,
today, and she'd be like,
a
"What
true
are you
Hefeweizen.
doing?"
Cool. I'm
Like she said, it has banana in it.
you know, you don't feel guilty though in the conference center
And,
because
this is American style, so
yes, that's
just
where I know.
That's where I know you. Okay.
These glass out
Yeah.
with,
Yep.
right?
Good friend. And I remember her telling you that my friend was going to JVF and
So fun. Yeah.
here. I'm sorry,
Can't smell anything.
Oh, there's one more. Okay.
Yeah, totally melon. Yep.
Oh yeah.
So have you gone to the Great American?
I always wanted to.
I think if you were to take that survey, you'd probably be one of not very many here.
I've always wanted to go. I do get to go to the Craft Brewers Conference this year down in Denver.
Oh, nice. Yeah. We did the rare beer one too, and that was awesome. I don't know, that was a lot of fun. Just to, you know, it's just like, it's unique. It's so funny because they're all nerds. All the men have like fanny packs on and cargo shorts and socks with sandals.
Oh yeah.
And they're talking about all the chemistry in the beer.
do you go?
And you're like, just give me the
Have you ever been to the Oregon Beer Festival? Oh, I guess that's a hoot.
Is it?
Yes, they have about 100 different breweries.
Fun.
Yeah,
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
There's
80 to 100.
Firestone Walker Invitational. That's one that I've always wanted to go
Ooh, that would be fun.
to.
I mean, I'd like to go East Coast, like Vermont, because there's some pretty good beer from Vermont. I'd like to do
One of
that.
my friends got the job as a salesperson for Toppling Goliath he's out of Milwaukee. And I keep saying either Milwaukee or I've got family in Chicago. And I keep telling them, like, I need to find the good event that's going on and go visit them.
I thought Toppling Goliath was Decatur.
Yeah. He's the salesperson in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So he lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun because he owed me beer for the set. That was great.
That works out good.
Maybe we'll do that for my 40th.
Ooh. I'll go with you.
Well, we're gonna go back to
I was, and then like in Denver, because this is going on, every bar
Oh yeah.
around is having some beer,
Something
teacher
special.
or a brewer.
Well, you said, did you go to that brunch thing that you guys were doing?
And who was that put on by? Let's see.
and go in the middle to cleanse your palate. Just
need to know this.
That's just one I like to start out with professional.
Oh, Epic. Out of Utah.
Which always drinks that beer.
So good.
Every time we meet up at Mitch, he brings that beer.
So they started in Salt Lake, and then they have a second one in Denver, and they call it Escape or something. That Escape series is really good because they were escaping the brewer laws in Utah.
Which are so fun.
But they're brewing the same beers.
No, they have to.
No.
Utah ones can't be as.
Can't be over 5%. Can it?
They changed it to 5 recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all the beer that's sold in Utah,
Unless it's bottled.
unless it's bottled and shipped. And those are usually higher. There you go.
And then they have like these. You can't go to a tasting room. They don't have tasting rooms. You have to eat. You have to
Yeah.
attempt to eat.
You have to actually buy food.
Yeah.
And depending on how many people, you have to buy a certain amount of food.
Right.
Yeah, and
We learned that the hard way.
you cannot get a second beer until your first one is gone. That was stupid. Yeah.
You find your loopholes though. My brother-in-law lives there. You find your spots.
Yeah, because it's confusing because it depends on where you go. They have different rules.
Yeah.
I wonder, can you do like clubs?
Yeah.
So if you're a member,
They do cards, and you can become a member with like, it looks like with credit cards. In some places, you can't even get in unless you have one.
right?
Yeah. So, like, we went to a restaurant bar when we were there, and we would have to sit in the restaurant unless we were there with a member, which Mitch and Katie were both.
I can smell it
So
now.
they showed their
I don't know if
cards.
it's
and then we
warming up a little, so I can actually get more of an aroma.
I grew up in a dry county,
That's what happened.
so I don't get the.
You know, I get
Don't
the
get the apricot though.
I get the meatiness of the Hefeweizen.
I like this better because it's really.
I feel like this is a light heck.
I mean, those yeast.
I don't feel like this is a real, like,
It's not that heavy yeast.
yeah, it's not.
I'm surprised.
Have you been to this one?
Odell's, I've been there. Yeah. They have so many beers. Will I try? Yeah. But, you know, thankfully they're not limited like we are here.
Right.
They can, here we have can only drink 3 beers. In Colorado, you can have all the beer you want.
Not a cap. How will we just go to another one?
I know.
Should get a little bit of bubble gum at the very end.
Bubble gum.
Yeah, I could taste
Little
that.
at the very end.
All right, let's talk about a Hefeweizen. Any thoughts on this Miner's Gold Hef? Flavors, aromas, what you like, what you didn't like.
I felt like it was light.
Light? Yeah. I agree.
Heavy.
I think it does it. I think it's lighter than I anticipate every time I taste this beer. I'm always expecting a little bit more out of it, both like in body and in flavor. that they took kind of the Scotch ale style and made it a little bit lighter for this specific beer.
The Scotch ales are typically an amber style, obviously high on the malts. The 90 shilling comes from the way that the Scottish used to tax their beer, and the highest taxed beer was 90 shillings, and so that was like the best beer they had. Obviously in Montana, our versions of Scotch and Scottish ales are drastically skewed, because cold smoke, even though they call it a Scotch ale, is not what you generally consider, according to the style guides of a Scotch. And you'll even notice, if you look at the color on this one versus what cold smoke or anything else, this is definitely more the amber family.
Thank you. Yeah, this is nice amber. They say it's scratch, but I say it's an amber.
It was Trista and Monty that brought this to our house that night. Whenever he was over. Really good.
Does anyone finish that on how to sound?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Caramel, a little bit of nutty.
I smell solvent.
Oh, the metallic kind of.
No, like cleaning.
You know,
I can see where you get that.
That's my first.
It's like a
First one was like
green kind of.
yeah.
Wet dog.
what?
Just kidding.
And then when you move it around, then it gives me a different kind of smell.
It does have that like metallic kind of
Yeah.
finish to it, you know.
Oh, you okay?
Kind of that bitter.
Metallic taste, but not quite metallic. But yeah, I taste beers sometimes that have a strong metallic. Well, yeah. I like it.
What is this word here? I can't read it.
Umami.
Oh,
Maybe rough.
it's funny because they undertaste don't even have metallic. It's more of an aroma. There's a sweetness to it though. Maybe that's common, you guys.
I'll get the sweetness.
I get the sweetness, but it doesn't taste like caramel.
Dried apricot. I do not. It doesn't even smell like it or taste like it.
All my neighbors are over there.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I feel like the longer you get, the like aftertaste definitely is starting to like change.
Yeah, exactly.
What's a little
But
heavy?
this
Yeah.
is very Scotch ale 2 style.
Arizona tastes like.
Just get on Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of just like this natural smoke.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I had one.
I don't know why that doesn't.
So as we head into our last two beers, we are, this next one, I guess, is sort of moving into the dessert category.
I'm excited for this one.
So we're going back to draft work for our last two beers. I am personally obsessed with this beer. I love it, and I was so excited when they started canning this and distributing it to Bozeman. So I'll let Katie talk a little bit about last rites. We're jumping into the Porter family, and this one has a lot of fun stuff going on with it. I did want to say that word adjuncts that Katie was saying earlier is like things that are added to beer that's not those four Reinheitsgebot categories. So this one has some adjuncts in it.
Yep. So when we say Mexican chocolate porter, there's no spice. It is cinnamon and cocoa nibs. Again, we use real cinnamon sticks, and I don't know what company we get our cocoa nibs from, but it's basically that super high baking cocoa type, actually ground cocoa nibs. So that's going to help with the chocolate, cinnamon. This is, for style, the American porters and American stouts are often interchangeable, usually just depending on the dryness of the finish. Some of the stouts are going to finish a little bit drier, little less sweet, but the styles can honestly be interchanged as we know them in the United States. So this one's obviously going to be like we said, it's a great dark chocolate. This one is really good with barbecues and stuff like that. I'll let everyone try it before I really start talking about some of the specifics. But again, if you're looking at like the malt profile, there is some flaked barley, which will help a little bit with backbone. Like I was saying before, there's only one kind of hop, but there's a bunch of different malts in this.
What's this flaked barley versus?
The last one. I actually read that and I thought about it.
Versus like
Uh-huh. Or the woody.
From my standpoint, I know that you don't put flaked barley into a mill because it will clog it. So that's pretty much as far as I know. So you'll actually add that into the mash tun separately. And that's kind of all I know about it.
Yeah, I can't answer that question.
What was the
What
question?
is it? Flaked barley versus like malted barley? Like what?
barley is not malt.
That's what I'm saying. But what's the difference between flaked barley and malted barley?
Well, it'll have more starch in it. More like complex carbohydrates.
Okay. Well, I think.
When you like oats.
Okay. So it's more fruit body than it is.
Anything that kind of provides more protein than it does sugar is generally for body and head retention. So you can add like flaked wheat is going to, like a lot of the times you add maybe 10% of that to your grain bill for certain types of beers. And that's actually not doing a whole lot for any, no, it's not doing anything for color, hardly doing anything for flavor. It's literally just for head retention and body mouthfeel.
Have things like cinnamon and like where in the process are those added in?
So it. They're by chance, you just don't know either. Be a chance. Yeah, what you're adding.
For the facility guy?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm down. You know, again, like, you know, it's super strong. Like, there's some that
It's like
cinnamon,
cinnamon, but there's something more bitter. Like the cinnamon.
You know, smelling it, I don't get much. The porters are like stouts; they have to be room temperature,
Yeah. It is a little cold.
and that's more than room temperature. That's cold. And they should give us this about half hour ago, 15 minutes ago, because I guarantee you'd smell differently
And I
and
definitely
taste differently.
burnt,
Bitter coat.
the burnt kind of.
That's it. It's like a burnt
Yeah.
cinnamon.
You read some of these and you're like, do I want it? It tastes wrong.
Oh, I know.
I've had one that was like sweat. Not so good.
Nordic has right now a coconut stout, toasted coconut stout. I tried it yet. So I just saw the Facebook post because they just got it this week. And I was like,
You know, I have problems drinking certain beers. Coconut, I can eat it. I do not like to drink it. Now,
I can eat, drink anything coconut. I love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. And just like pumpkin, I can eat pumpkin pie, drink it, no thank you.
Oh, yeah. I like the pumpkin ales too.
Yeah, I'm just strange like that about certain
About the
things, you
pumpkin
know.
stuff.
yeah, me too.
There was one that was really good in, what town is it? It's a small little town. They did a seasonal pumpkin. And they actually like put a little sugar on the rim. It was like, yeah, it was really good.
Here in Montana.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the town. It's blank on me. It's the brewery called. But that, like, I guess there's a big candy store in the town.
Virginia City?
Phillipsburg.
Phillipsburg. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
They've gotten
delicious.
better. When they first opened, I didn't really like them.
Okay.
And
But
then,
I've heard that they've gotten pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah, I
This
liked
summer it was
everything.
good.
I liked everything but that. Like, I'm not a big pumpkin.
Yeah.
It was a pumpkin porter, I think.
Yeah.
And it was delicious. And they did put like a more to the whatever with the little sugar. Yeah, it was delicious.
I also have a problem with livers.
No, you're not driving back to Butte tonight, are you?
Ew, I gotta road. I don't drive at dark. I'm telling you. Especially in the wintertime. Especially anytime. Dark, but if it gets dark out, for one, I can't see.
Yeah.
Two, I'm always looking for animals, so
I know it.
I'm driving really slow and, you know.
Did you see that herd of elk on the news crossing Highway 91 out of Gallatin Gateway?
Oh, no.
Yeah, just totally stopped traffic.
So many of
Herd
them.
just crossed the road.
Only time that has happened to me, me and my ex-husband, we were driving the truck and we were down in Wyoming, and antelope.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, you could not believe they just started coming across they probably ran across it for 15 minutes.
Crazy.
And we're sitting there, what? Let's hear that. These coconuts are quite bitter.
Good question to ask.
Because I think the chocolate nib definitely adds to the bitterness.
Yeah.
So, yeah. This is probably one of my favorite beers.
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
I'm like
yes.
so excited.
That's my right hand.
I don't have to try this one again. I'll just have a whole can of this.
Yeah.
Alright, I want to
So are you guys
everybody
brewers? Are you brewers?
tasting in our last right.
We drink a lot.
We do.
What stands out to you
We like
with this beer? Aromas, flavors, mouthfeel,
Bitterness.
bitterness.
Burnt bitterness.
Burnt. Yeah, absolutely. So this chocolate malt, this would be another beer that would be great to taste a little piece of the malt next to the beer. I don't know. Yep. So this malt is in this beer. So seeing as you're eating that malt, like, oh, I can pick out those flavors, one of which is probably burnt.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Denser? For sure. This one is definitely has more body, like more mouthfeel to it.
So, when you're doing the IBUs, do you take into account the bitterness of the cocoa nibs too?
Yep, it's all usually perceived bitterness, and that does come into play on a lot of that.
In contrast, the way, just like Jesse was saying, like people calculate IBUs differently. So MAP would not take that into account.
Interesting.
So basically, don't trust the numbers.
Use it as a guideline. Obviously, if it's 100, you're going to know it's going to be super, super, super
Bitter.
There's a brewery in my hometown. I haven't been there yet, but my dad talked to the brewer and like posted pictures of their beer menu and everything. And the guy refuses to put IBUs on his beers because he doesn't believe in them. So you can go to a lot of breweries that have different ideas of what IBU means. And even Uber Brew last year came out with a beer that was theoretically 0 IBUs, but it was still a very perceived bitter beer. So there's like perceived bitterness and theoretical bitterness, and it just gets kind of confusing.
And our head brewer does like to do perceived bitterness, so there's a lot of times that we're trying to make these sell sheets, and I'm like, I just need sell sheets to bring out the road. He's like, I'm not going to do that because I don't know where it's going to be. So a lot of our hazies, milkshakes, the New England IPAs, he will wait to declare what he wants it to be until he's had it, because some of those other ones, when you are adding additional, the lactose, the oats, the fruit, it will knock it way down.
Yeah, especially
He refuses to put something on there until he's comfortable with where, like, he looks at what his target was and that, and what it actually tastes like. Another thing for this one, this is a great cooking beer. It's great with stews, chilies.
Yep.
So it's also really pairs well with a lot of those like comfort foods and the
Chocolate.
nice hearty meals.
Cook it all day in it.
Okay, so we're going to move into our last beer for the night, but I did want to say we kind of hit the 8 o'clock, which is where we said we'd land, and so if anybody, please don't feel bad if you need to take off if you have other things going on. I totally understand. I'm sorry we went a little bit over time, but we're about to pass out our last beer, which is an IPA. So now that we're all swimming in the IBU world, it is true that higher levels of bitterness kind of ruin, for lack of a better word, your palate. So even if you go to a brewery and you get a flight, you always kind of want to end with the really bitter beers, because that'll just affect the way you're tasting. You won't taste some of the subtleties that maybe we tasted in the earlier beers if we would have started with our IPA. So that's why we're ending with Scepter tonight. And just in case anyone needs to leave, I did just want to say another thank you both to the Kitty
can.
One of the things I know I say yes, I'm biased, obviously, for loving DraftWorks, but I actually did seek this job out. I knew they were getting ready to expand into cans. About 6 months before I was hired, I approached them and said, hey, you're the brewery I want to work for. This is what I can offer you. This is my expertise. And this is a huge reason why, to me, as much as I love IPAs, there are all different kinds of IPAs like we've been talking about. That's going to be the next one that goes from 3 different categories or 4 different categories to about 20. And
Thank you.
the highest IBUs you can get, knock your tongue off. But we want the balance, so that's why you're still going to be able to
Citrusy.
like the malt
Yeah.
balance it out, and that's going to help offset the hoppiness from it. We did win gold at the 2014 GABF for this year. We won
Zooptic.
very small brewery of the year that year, and Lewis and Clark won small brewery of the year this past year in 2018. And then actually in 2016, it was Uber Brew out of Billings. So considering 3 of the last 5 years, Montana, they only give out very small, medium, and then like large is usually, I don't even know if they give that amount anymore. It's usually like Miller. I mean, I guess it might be Sam, Sierras, places like that. But so it's still a huge honor, and I'm very lucky to say Montana who got 3 of those. This one's by far. By far. Where do you guys distribute? So we have distributors in Missoula View, Bozeman, Great Falls, Helm, Kalispell. And so as far as those distributors go, so out of Great Falls we go to about Lewistown, is about Spartan East. And then here out of Bozeman we go Cook City and Big Timber. And then all the way west, north, south, and west borders from there. Nope. Nothing in Billings unless it's been bootlegged.
Alright, so we'll come back together in a couple of minutes. As you have a chance to soak in everything that is the Scepter IPA.
No.
Question. Do you guys need to buzz ticket?
That's a rare.
Last time you guys had it, I went and spilled like $3 while you had it. Oh, I love it. It's one of my favorites. Non-IPA, I should say. My favorite non-IPA.
Sunny lately.
We went to Beer Maven like last week.
It's the cutest damn thing ever. Those dimples give me every single time.
My sister is like obsessed with Anne's dimples. So she was like, my sister lives in South Dakota, and she was like, first picture I saw where Sunny had those dimples, she's like, I teared up. I was so happy Sunny got Anne's dimples.
I know. Anne's gorgeous. She was there when I won the Yeti.
Oh, yeah.
I was so glad you were there. Like,
So excited.
getting so much getting a phone call is so fun, but like at the same time being right there, it's like
They're like, they just said your name.
Mary is so drunk. What?
what do you guys get out of this one?
Citrusy.
Citrusy?
Yeah.
Yummy goodness.
Yes.
It's grapefruity. The citrus.
So
It's like bitter.
I know that you're a teacher, so you might already know, but I have a vocabulary word that's one of my favorite words to describe bitter citrus, which is pithy.
Yeah.
Piss is the like white part on an orange or whatever that you try and peel off, and it's that when you leave too much of it on and then you eat the orange and you're like, oh, I should have peeled more of that off.
Yeah.
Bitter.
Yep.
So that a lot of times that word pithy is like the perfect word to describe that citrusy but like bitter.
Yep. Yep.
And then it's grassy or earthy?
I was gonna say some of that earthiness.
Yeah. The what? Oh.
Yeah, in that tropical fruit category.
It's complex.
Yeah. Which I think is funny, and this for me is like, so I drink this beer a lot. You know, like, we're going to camp or whatever, we'll pick up a 6-pack.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll put it in my little koozie and, drink 3 of it without thinking about it. And then when I actually am like sipping and tasting, I'm like, oh, it is really complex that I just don't think about when I'm just drinking it. So,
Okay.
Have you got into Melvin's that are here now? What's your favorite?
I mean, I do love 2x4. Yeah, I do have to say that I have, as a self-proclaimed feminist, I have a hard time.
I get the grapefruit. Yeah.
Nasty stuff happens.
I really do. It just comes
And it
forth.
wasn't even like,
For me, it comes at the end.
Yeah. For me, it's right here at the front of my tongue. That's the first thing I taste. That's, yeah.
It's the last thing I taste.
Yeah.
It's the lingering flavor that
Yeah.
I have. What you described as pithy.
in the whole cog of the system.
And it's what I get from on the back
what I
of my
mean? It's
palate.
like,
It's not everybody there.
made
It's
bad
just
decisions.
yeah.
I just noticed the Nostradamus is, they said they might be distributing yeah, so try it.
What's it called?
Nostradamus.
I see it all. Let you know.
Yeah.
Like those kind of things go really fast.
A double. Almost everything that brews are doubles.
Oh, you really like them, huh?
Yeah, they'll knock you on your.
Oh yeah.
But Judy,
Yeah.
I like the pineapple express too.
oh, I do too.
You would like that than the Melvin
Oh,
beers.
yeah. Melvin's out of,
Well, Alpine.
yeah. Now, one brewery, well, it's not a brewery, it's actually a brew pub. The Mayor in Fort Collins. 100 taps on the whole wall. 100 taps.
And they all full?
Yes.
I've been to places like that. Like those that were out at the.
They get something like a Untapped or something like that, but they know how much each one is. And you looking at, well, paper, because they don't have a board big enough.
That was the place. There's a place in Hawaii when I was there,
Yeah.
and it was called the Magoo. And it was an outdoor bar, and they had a circular bar with 100 taps around it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you'd start to look, and you'd just be like, "Okay, give me this.
Oh, give me.
Just give me an IPA."
How big's your
Okay,
flight?
we have 26 of those.
So let's see the Red Rock Contemporary. It's a bar. It's like that too.
It's like that.
And
Yeah.
they would just get one keg from a brewery.
And then rotate.
And it was like,
I think Al's Bake Shop in Des Moines, Iowa is the same way. They're like 100 taps.
and then if you ever go to Washington D.C., I haven't been, but my husband goes all the time to Church Key.
Church Key. I heard.
Telling us about that.
Yeah, I need to go because that's all he.
Would Doug let us come? Just kidding.
Can you let us? We chaperone 8th graders in D.C.
The
I
one
don't think that would be okay.
one
They have root beer, right?
I mean, feed the kids.
Hey, Doug likes to drink.
one brewery I would really love to go see is Carson Ales, Prairie Artisan. Krebs, Oklahoma. Oh my God, they make
Granville, Oklahoma.
Krebs, Oklahoma. And, oh my God, they make amazing beer, from their sours to their stouts.
Where is that in Oklahoma? Because I'm from very very close.
No.
Must be
He's doing it northeast.
up around
What you get is not Mexican breweries that I went to. You can get them from different. I mean, it's not like so if you were to walk into the back of the map, you would see.
where do you guys work? Second Street Middle School.
Like there's a couple other independent companies.
Yeah, it is.
Where is Crabs, Oklahoma?
And so Sam Hoffman was with Boston. So that's where and then I got a job.
That must be how she knows Beer Maven.
What did she teach?
Where she said elementary.
I think she taught a lot. Is that where it goes? The stuff?
Yeah.
Alright, let's bring it back together one more time. I'd love to hear about any IPA flavors that anyone's getting from this. There's a lot going on here. We were talking about how complex this is when you really sit down and think about it. It smells a lot stronger than cheese. Yeah. Lots of aromas.
And like I said, and that's just how we brew it with
And southeast of Oklahoma City.
So see, I'm from.
the hops and making sure that it's a lot of the
okay,
aromatic
not too
hops,
far. Yeah.
using specific hops certain times to boil.
They,
We do dry hop this one as
they
well,
make some damn good beer.
strictly for aroma.
They do. You think? No. I tasted their beer. I'm from South. Well, I moved to Butte, South Dakota, and from South Dakota we get obviously quite a bit.
Yeah, very, very,
And,
very little
you know,
boil.
your
Mostly
stouts to
right at the end.
sours to
a lot of
their wild
the dry hops, which is
It's
just
all
strictly to get
fantastic beer.
the aromatics out of it because you're not giving it a chance to use those alpha acids from the
And it can still be an IPA even though it's
like I said, there's things that, especially anymore, that you can kind of take liberties and call things different things. I mean, you look at all the different types of IPAs. There's the brut, there's the black, there's the hazy, there's the, I mean,
I saw a meme of, it was,
was it,
Forrest Gump
yeah, Forrest
listing
Gump.
off all the types of shrimp that he was listing off.
That's hilarious.
It's really funny.
Before that had a double pale ale. And it was like, that's an IPA.
Does that exist?
And actually, much to that, you know, when you look at the judging and the different categories in the judging, when we did win gold, we actually won gold in the very strong pale ale, very, very strong American pale ale, just because where our IBUs are and our ABV is right kind of on that level. We obviously call it an IPA because that's stylistically what we want it to be, but when you enter things into these competitions, they can fit in multiple categories. And you pick which category you feel you have the best chance because of, like I said, when you're looking at the list of what the characteristics are, where you feel it's going to hit that mark. But it does have certain things you actually have to fit into that, but some of them, like the IBUs and a lot of the ABVs, is a little bit more guideline than the strict what makes it that style. Great. How many of you, this was the first time you'd ever tried Deceptor?
Oh, really?
Just think. Honestly, this time, like I said. And even people